Last Sunday, I asked you for adventure stories, if you had any great stories of travel or adventure or journey in your life. And one response that I got came from Ben Bowler, who's a New Hoper here. And Ben posted this on a website and wrote this about that place. There are certain places that grab you, places where time loses consequence, that make the hairs stand up on your forearms, and whose energy invokes the spirit of your life. The summit of Mount Assiniboine in the Canadian Rockies is such a place. When my climbing partner and I reached the summit in 2008, 11,870 feet, I remember the crunching squeaks that our crampons made as they compressed the snow, the sting of the wind on my cheeks, and the pulsing of my heart, which clanged like a blacksmith's anvil in my temples as I absorbed the enormity of nature around me. Staring out from the highest point in the Canadian Southern Rockies was a life catalyst. It made me grateful for the opportunity to be alive. If I had only 1 week left in my life, I'd find another place like this, and I'd savor it as though my life depended on it. So Ben took the picture, and that's his friend. And I look at that, and I go, wow. And I read his words, and I have 3 responses. The first one is, I could never do that. And the second one is, oh, how I want to do that. And the third one is, I remember doing something like that, climbing Montreal River Hill north of Superior on my bike. On my bike, it was a big climb. This wasn't meant to be funny. This is my equivalent. I'm not preaching anymore. West Coast Trail, I thought about that a little bit and how that hike was a bit of a stretch for me. But can you ever imagine? Maybe you have. Can you remember doing something like that? The feeling of exhilaration and being alive, unlike most of our ordinary lives. The freedom and the space that you feel. Maybe you felt it on a climb or at the top of a mountain about to head down on your snowboard, or on a hike, or on a slope, or on a ride somewhere, some great travel adventure on the other side of the world, or some other life-stretching journey. Have you ever been there and felt those places? Ever been in touch with what Ben called that energy that evokes the spirit of your life? The moment I read that phrase on that website, I was reminded of something I learned back in seminary about how the Apostle Paul, when he writes the word spirit in reference to God's Holy Spirit, he uses a Greek word which is often used in another context to mean energy. And I think about the Spirit of God being the energy of God. In the Old Testament and the story of Genesis, the Hebrew words for the power of the Spirit hovering over the world, creating everything, that Spirit, the same word means the power of God. Which makes me wonder then, if all of our searches for all of those kinds of places, through all of our traveling passions, are really ultimately about our search for Him, for the energy, for God. All those desires, those anticipatory, exciting desires in us, those yearnings to explore and discover new places, those deeply seated, childlike curiosities that are built into us, maybe they're about those travels and those places we go to, but maybe they're also at the same time about a much bigger journey, your life's journey, to a much greater height a more sublime destination, union with your Maker, with God. In his book, Alain de Botton, our homework that we've been reading, writes about curiosity and makes the point in the whole chapter that curiosity is really what drives us, is working in us as we travel and want to travel. And he writes this: curiosity might be pictured as being made up of small questions extending outwards, sometimes over huge distances, from a central hub composed of a few blunt, large questions. In childhood, we ask, why is there good and evil? How does nature work? Why am I me? And then as I'm reading it, I want to add, and is there a God? If circumstances and temperament allow, we then build on these questions during adulthood, our curiosity encompassing more and more of the world until at some point, and this is ideal, some point we may reach that elusive stage where we are bored by nothing. The blunt, large questions become connected to smaller, apparently esoteric ones. We end up wondering about flies on the sides of mountains, or a particular fresco on the wall of a 16th century palace. We start to care about the foreign policy of a long-dead Iberian monarch, or about the role that peat played in the 30 Years' War. Which makes me wonder again, if God made everything, everyone, all things in this world, if he's in behind it all, wouldn't it make sense that the more we experience and know and come to understand and engage and walk through and live and breathe in this world through our travels, the more we'll have to know him with and love him with and honor him with and be filled with joy with and passion and excitement with, the more we'll have to worship God with all of our being. And if that's true, then is our travel itch, this insatiable desire to take it all in and more of it in, to deeply explore the world, and just keep taking more and more and more of this world in, is it really about God wanting to take in more and more and more of who you are? Is this passion to go and explore the world, God, like a homing beacon that you've put in us, compelling us to seek out your grandeur, to enter into your barren expansiveness, to touch your heights and experience your beauty, engage in your power and miraculous glory?